Dean Caspian Vale held up my personnel file in front of the entire faculty and said, "This is what happens when a clerk mistakes routine paperwork for power." That was how he announced my removal. Not privately, not professionally. In the main council chamber, under 3 humming crystal chandeliers, while 40 professors, 6 department chairs, 2 scholarship patrons, and 1 royal education mirror watched me sit there with cold tea in my hands. My name is Helena Brighthand. I'm 46 years old, and for 18 years I was Senior Registrar of Starfall Academy. Most people thought that meant I stamped forms, corrected student names, and told noble parents they had missed deadlines. I did do all of that. What Dean Vale did not understand was that my signature also controlled enrollment wards, tuition verification, scholarship grants, dormitory access, apprentice licenses, and the Academy's annual royal funding. A little over 2.4 million silver crescents a year passed through systems that recognized my seal before they recognized the dean. He had been dean for 12 days. 12. I had pantry biscuits in my office older than his administration. He stood at the front of the chamber wearing a silver cloak clasp shaped like a phoenix, because apparently nothing says serious educational reform like dressing as your own rebirth. Beside him sat his cousin, Seraphine Vale, smiling like she had already measured my office curtains. Dean Vale tapped the file again. Effective immediately, Helena Brighthand will step down as registrar. Her duties will be absorbed by the new Office of Student Advancement under Miss Vale's supervision. Nobody moved. Even the enchanted copy press stopped coughing out duplicate agendas. I asked, "Has Miss Vale completed Royal Registry certification?" Dean Vale laughed. Not loudly, worse, softly. "Helena, ink certification is not leadership." A few junior lecturers smiled at the table. I nodded. "Then, has the 30-day continuity transfer been filed?" His expression cooled. "We are not asking a government clerk for permission to modernize our academy." "No," I said. "You would be asking the Royal Education Council." He leaned forward. "You are a registrar, a useful one, I'm sure, but still a registrar. Please do not embarrass yourself by pretending Starfall depends on your signature." That was the moment the bursar went pale. That was also the moment I knew Dean Vale had not read page 47 of the founding charter. So I removed my access badge, placed it on the table, and said, "You have until sunset to request emergency continuity review." He smiled. "Your concern is noted." "No," I said, "it is." Then I picked up my satchel and walked out. I did not become essential because anyone planned it. I became essential because for 18 years, every crisis at Starfall Academy arrived at my desk after someone important had already made it worse. I started as a junior records scribe when I was 28, recently widowed, raising a 4-year-old daughter, and paying for my mother's lung curse medicine at 80 silver crescents a month. My desk was in the basement beside the heat crystal. In winter, it burned your ankles. In summer, it smelled like old socks and boiled ink. Starfall looked majestic from the outside. White towers, floating lanterns, students in blue robes practicing levitation over the courtyard fountain. Inside, it ran on forms. Enrollment forms, tuition scrolls, scholarship contracts, money-use waivers, dormitory permissions, familiar damage reports. So many familiar damage reports. The first thing I learned was that magic did not keep the academy running. Documentation did. A student could not enter a dormitory unless the housing ward recognized their registration. The housing ward would not recognize registration unless tuition status matched the Spirit Bank ledger. The Spirit Bank ledger would not clear unless the registrar seal matched the Royal Registry. And the Royal Registry, being a government office, moved at the speed of cold honey unless you knew which clerk preferred blue ink and which courier raven-bit fingers. I learned all of it. Not because I was ambitious, because my daughter needed shoes, My mother needed medicine, and my rent did not accept excuses. I worked late through enrollment weeks. I corrected ledgers after apprentice mages spilled memory potion on them. I helped scholarship students whose parents could not read legal runes. I negotiated with noble families who believed deadlines were for people without surnames. Once, I spent 13 hours proving that a farm girl named Myrle Thorne had been denied a storm magic grant because someone entered her village as Oak Ridge instead of Old Ridge. When the grant came through, she cried into my sleeve. The dean at the time called it excellent clerical diligence. Then he forgot my name again. That was Starfall. Professors were brilliant, patrons were rich, deans were temporary. Registrars stayed. By my 12th year, I managed tuition wards. By my 15th, I was Senior Registrar and Royal Signatory of Academic Continuity. That title mattered. No one remembered it, but it mattered. After the old Starfall Academy scandal, where administrators faked enrollment and stole scholarship funds, the Crown changed the law. Every licensed magical academy needed one certified registrar whose seal tied enrollment, tuition, and grants together. Not the dean. Not the board. The registrar. My seal ring was moon silver, plain enough that most people mistook it for a widow's band. It was not plain. It was a signature, a password, and a fraud alarm wearing jewelry. If I retired properly, authority could be transferred. If I was removed without cause, replaced by an uncertified person, or locked out during enrollment week, the system froze. Automatically. No curse, no explosion, no dramatic lightning. Just compliance. Which, in my experience, scares rich people much more. Dean Vale had been warned. 3 days before the meeting, he sent me a crystal memo asking for complete registrar access for Seraphine. I replied with the certification requirements. He ignored that. 2 days before the meeting, Seraphine came to my office and asked where I kept the seal password. I told her the seal ring was bound to my oath, license, and verified ledger history. She blinked. So there's no password? No. That seems inefficient. It seems secure. She gave me a look young nobles give old furniture. The morning of the faculty meeting, I found my nameplate removed from my office door. Inside, my drawers had been opened. Someone had placed silver lilies on my desk, which was an interesting way to make theft smell expensive. My assistant, Tomrin, stood by the cabinets looking miserable. I told them you hadn't approved the archive transfer, he whispered. I know. They said the dean approved it. I know. Are we in trouble? I looked at the tuition ward crystal above my desk. Still green, still active, still mine. Not we, I said. After the meeting, I went back to collect my personal things. Seraphine was already sitting in my chair, reading one of my intake summaries upside down. Oh, Helena, she said, I thought you'd left. I'm taking my mug. Of course, please don't remove Academy property. I picked up the cracked clay mug my daughter made when she was 9. It said best mum in uneven warming runes that kept tea lukewarm for exactly 7 extra minutes. Wouldn't dream of it. I packed my mug, 3 notebooks, my mother's medicine schedule, and a tin of cinnamon biscuits I kept for crying students and overworked clerks. Seraphine watched me open the lower drawer. You can leave the active grant ledger, she said. I paused. You don't have it. Her smile thinned. It's in the black cabinet. No, the visible ledger is in the black cabinet. The active ledger is in the warded compartment behind it. It opens during grant week for a certified registrar if enrollment and tuition numbers match. She stared at me. Then open it before you go. I can't. Why not? Because I was removed. But you're standing here. The ward does not care where my body is standing. It cares about legal status. Her face changed then, just slightly. Can't you override it? No. Why? Because someone wiser than your cousin designed the system to prevent exactly that. She flushed. You're enjoying this. I looked at my empty nameplate mark on the door. No, I said, I'm really not. I left through the side gate, past 2 first-years arguing with a broom closet that had been enchanted to give motivational advice and now refused to stop. At home, my daughter Lena was repairing our stove. You're early, she said. I was dismissed. Her wrench hit the floor. Can he do that? He can say he did. That's not the same thing. No, I said, it is. At 3:22, my crystal mirror chimed. Tomrin. The grant ledger won't open. At 3:41, the bursar messaged. Tuition Ward rejected Seraphine's authorization. At 3:56, Professor Alowan wrote. Dean says this is temporary, is it? I made fresh tea. Then I sat at my kitchen table and watched the rain while Starfall Academy discovered the difference between a clerk and a keyholder. By dawn, the tuition wards had stopped accepting payments. That sounds minor, until you remember it was registration week. 412 new students were trying to confirm places. 1,200 returning students were selecting courses. 39 scholarship recipients had grant appointments before noon. All of them needed the registrar seal. At 6:08, the first parent sent a complaint through the Academy mirror line. At 6:19, the Spirit Bank froze the tuition account pending authority verification. At 6:31, the West Dormitory ward locked out a second-year illusion student who had stepped outside in slippers to collect breakfast. At 6:44, 6 courier ravens landed outside Dean Vale's office at the same time, which must have been upsetting because those birds hate teamwork. By 7:00, Tomrin had sent me 11 updates. I did not answer. Not because I wanted innocent people to suffer. Because I no longer worked there, and unpaid emergency labor is just exploitation wearing panic as a hat. At 7:26, Dean Vale called. I let the mirror ring. At 7:27, he called again. At 7:29, Seraphine called. At 7:32, the board chair called. At 7:40, Counselor Vera from the Royal Education Council called. That one I answered. She appeared in the glass, wearing the official blue collar of someone who enjoyed denying requests professionally. Helena, she said, were you removed from registrar authority yesterday? Yes. Was a certified replacement appointed? No. Was 30-day continuity notice filed? No. Did you surrender your seal ring? No. Good, do not. I took a breath for the first time all morning. She continued, Dean Vale claims you are obstructing operations. That is imaginative. Her mouth twitched. Send me a written statement by noon. Dates, witnesses, direct language. The freeze remains valid. So I wrote it. Not angry, not poetic. Time, place, names, witnesses, exact words. Glorified ink dispenser looked very small on official paper. Somehow that made it worse. By noon, the active grant ledger sealed itself. That meant the quarterly royal payment of 600,000 silver crescents did not release. At 12:18, the dormitory system stopped issuing new room keys. At 12:32, the exam eligibility ward rejected every unconfirmed student, including Lord Merrick's son, who was scheduled for advanced summoning. Lord Merrick owned the East Observatory. He also owned 7 newspapers. By 1:00, Starfall Academy's message board read, Temporary registration delay. Please remain calm. A student edited the courtyard chalk wall to say, Please panic in an orderly fashion. I respected that. Then the real problem woke up. The Ashbill Protection Clause. If registrar continuity was broken during enrollment week, all student deposits became refundable after 48 hours. All of them. 2,017 deposits. Total exposure, 1.3 million silver crescents. At 2:11, Dean Vale left me a message. Helena, this has gone far enough. Return my call immediately. I played it for Lena. She said, he sounds like a man discovering gravity. I told her to be kind. She said, absolutely not. Fair. At 4:16 that afternoon, Dean Vale came to my house. In the rain. His silver cloak was damp, his hair was losing discipline, and for the first time since I met him, he looked less like a portrait and more like a person who had read a financial report. Behind him stood board chair Neril Ashcombe and Master Pell, the bursar. I opened the door, but did not invite them in. My mother was asleep inside, breathing charm glowing blue. Lena sat at the kitchen table pretending not to listen. Ashcombe spoke first. Helena, we need to resolve this. You needed to resolve it yesterday. Yes, she said. Mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. The official language of people who know exactly who made them. Dean Vale cleared his throat. If anything I said came across as dismissive. It did. His jaw tightened. Ashcombe looked at him sharply. He tried again. I apologize for the tone of the meeting. Not the action. The transition was handled poorly. I folded my arms. The transition was illegal under charter, non-compliant under royal registry rules, and insulting under ordinary manners. Master Pell looked at the porch floor as if praying to become a floorboard. Ashcombe said, we are prepared to reinstate you immediately. No. Dean Vale's face hardened. Helena, be reasonable. I am. The Academy needs a registrar. The Academy had won. Silence. Rain tapped on the porch stones. Ashcombe stepped closer. We will issue a formal apology and adjust your salary. How much? Dean Vale answered, 45,000. I stared at him. After 18 years, after public humiliation, after triggering a freeze worth millions, he offered me 6,600 more silver crescents a year. Lena made a sound from inside the house that might have been laughter or choking. Ashcombe closed her eyes. 72,000, she said. Dean Vale turned. Neril. Be quiet, Caspian. I considered the number. It would fix my roof, cover my mother's medicine, help Lena finish engineering school without debt. But returning meant walking back under the same dean, the same board, and the same people who had stared at the table while I was called replaceable. So I said, no. Ashcombe's expression tightened with real fear. What will you accept? I will provide emergency continuity consulting for 14 days. 4,000 silver crescents per day, paid in advance through the Spirit Bank. I will not train Seraphine. I will not surrender my seal ring. I will not report to Dean Vale. And the Academy will send a written apology to faculty, staff, scholarship patrons, and the Royal Education Council. Dean Vale laughed once. That is absurd. I nodded and began closing the door. Ashcombe put her hand against it. Accepted. Caspian stared at her. Accepted. Yes, she said, accepted. I held her gaze. One more condition. Tomrin becomes Deputy Registrar trainee immediately, at 44,000 a year, with certification fees paid. Master Pell whispered, thank the saints. Ashcombe nodded. Done. Dean Vale looked at me like I had robbed him. I had not. I had simply started charging for the work he thought was beneath him. I returned to Starfall the next morning as an emergency consultant. A beautiful title, really. It means the same people who ignored your emails now treat your calendar like a sacred relic. 2 security golems bowed at the gate. That was new. Tomrin met me outside the registrar's office with 3 cups of tea because he did not know which one I wanted. All of them, I said. My nameplate had been restored. Below it, someone had taped a student note. Please save U.S. Lady paperwork. I left it there. The apology had gone out before sunrise. It was stiff, legal, and obviously written by someone who wanted Dean Vale to suffer incomplete sentences. It stated that my removal violated academy procedure, that my work was essential to institutional continuity, and that administrative staff were to be treated with professional respect. Was it warm? No. Did I print a copy later? Yes. I reopened the grant ledger at 9:04. The tuition wards reconnected at 9:37. By 2:15, Tomrin and I had verified 1,612 student records. At 3:20, the Royal Treasury released the 600,000 silver crescents. At 4:05, the West Dormitory stopped trapping students outside in slippers. Small victories matter. Dean Vale did not come near me. He sent messages through Master Pell, who looked more exhausted each time. By the end of the week, the board placed Dean Vale on strategic leave, which is noble language for please stop touching things before they become lawsuits. Seraphine resigned from the Office of Student Advancement, a department that existed for 6 days and produced one logo. House Vale paid a 180,000 crescent compliance settlement. Lord Merrick's newspapers still ran the story. The headline was, STRFALL locked by its own ledger. Not elegant, accurate. After my 14 consulting days ended, Ashcombe offered me the permanent registrar role again. 82,000 silver crescents a year, 2 clerks, protected authority, direct reporting to the board. 5 years earlier, I would have accepted before she finished speaking. But something had changed when I sat at my own kitchen table and let their mirror calls ring. I had spent 18 years being indispensable to people who only noticed when fear forced them to. I did not want to be indispensable anymore. I wanted to be free. So I declined. Tomrin became acting registrar under council supervision. He earned it. He knew the system, cared about the students, and had developed the proper registrar instinct of distrusting any form with too much blank space. I opened a small academic compliance office above a bakery that sells cardamom buns shaped like dragons. My first client was the Royal Education Council. My second was Merrick University. My third, hilariously, was Starfall Academy, because Tomrin refused to approve their next reform proposal until I reviewed it. My consulting rate remains 4,000 silver crescents a day. Paid in advance. Lena finished engineering school without debt. My mother's medicine is covered for 3 years. I fixed the roof, replaced the stove, and now I leave work before sunset twice a week, which feels more magical than half the spells I have ever filed. As for Dean Vale, he went back to his family vineyards and now gives speeches about institutional humility. Someone sent me the clipping. I used it to level the short leg of my kitchen table. People ask if I regret not saving him from himself. I don't. I warned him. He heard a clerk speaking and forgot that institutions are not held together by titles, cloaks, or speeches. They are held together by the people who know which seal opens which ledger, which deadline cannot move, and which quiet little clause wakes up when arrogance signs the wrong folder. Dean Vale thought he was removing a replaceable woman from a chair. What he actually removed was the only signature the Academy's magic still trusted.